I've worked as a mortuary technician for years, and after a while, nothing really shocks me anymore. The smell, the heavy silence, the cold of the instruments, everything becomes routine. But there's something about that night that I still can't explain. I was alone on the overnight shift, as usual, and had an autopsy to perform on an unidentified body. The person they brought in was in an advanced state of decomposition, but that was what I expected. None of us in the morgue expect anything pleasant. With my earbuds in, I set the recorder on and started working, making my usual notes as I went along. The room was silent, with the fluorescent lights flickering overhead, like they were about to burn out. Every time the scalpel cut through the body, the blade made that familiar soft squelch, something I had long grown accustomed to. I was so focused on my task that I didn't notice anything unusual until I felt my phone vibrate. Glancing at it, I half expected a message from my boss or maybe a reminder for something unrelated. But when I unlocked the screen, I froze. The message was from an unknown number, simply saying, "Let me know when you're done." My blood ran cold. How was this possible? I was completely alone in the room. There was no one else around. I stared at the phone for a moment, trying to make sense of it. There was no way anyone had sent this. I hadn't heard anyone come in or out, and no one had been scheduled for a shift change. I set the phone down, dismissing it as some weird glitch. But then, just as I was about to get back to work, I felt it. A subtle shift in the air. The room seemed to get colder, and I thought I heard something like a low, raspy breath, almost like a sigh. I froze again, my eyes darting around the room, but everything was still. The body on the table hadn't moved. There was no one there. I tried to focus on my work, telling myself it was just the fatigue playing tricks on me. The lights flickered again, this time more violently, as if they were struggling to stay on. I went back to the autopsy, pushing everything out of my mind. But the next time I cut into the body's chest, I swore I saw something in the corner of my eye. A shadow. It moved too quickly for me to catch a glimpse, and when I looked, the room was empty. Just the body on the table and the usual sterile surroundings. But the feeling of being watched, it was there. I felt a knot in my stomach that I couldn't shake. My hands began to shake slightly, and I had to steady myself before continuing. I moved the scalpel deeper into the body, trying to ignore the creeping unease that had taken hold of me. Then out of nowhere, I heard it again, a sound this time clearer. A rasping, wheezing breath. It seemed to come from the far corner of the room. I turned quickly, expecting to see someone or something standing there. But no one was in sight. I checked the doorway. It was still locked from the inside. The air felt thick now, as if it had weight. I could almost feel something pressing down on my chest. My heart started racing, and I knew I had to finish the autopsy. I needed to leave. I grabbed the recorder to make my final notes, but as I listened back to the audio, something stopped me cold. There, in the background, between my own voice and the sounds of the procedure, was a low, gravelly whisper. The voice was clear enough to make out. It wasn't mine. It wasn't anyone else's. It was a faint, raspy voice, just barely audible. "Why am I here?" it whispered. I hit pause, my mind racing. Who the hell had said that? And how was it recorded on my device? I felt a cold sweat break out across my back. I had been alone in that room. I hadn't seen anyone else come or go. Yet, that voice had been there. I kept playing the recording, hoping I was just imagining things. But it was there, over and over again. Why am I here? It wasn't in the background static, it was distinct, deliberate. The question hung in the air, and I couldn't help but wonder, was it from the body on the table? Was it from something else? My mind raced with possibilities, but none of them made any sense. I finished the autopsy as quickly as I could, trying to shake off the dread that had settled in my bones. But I couldn't. Even after I left the room and locked the door behind me, the unease lingered. I couldn't explain what had happened. I tried to convince myself that it was just exhaustion, maybe a glitch in the recording. But every time I think about it, I can't help but feel that there was something else in that room with me, something that didn't belong. That was the last time I worked the overnight shift at that morgue. I couldn't bring myself to go back after what I heard. The voice. I've never been able to shake it. Even now, when I close my eyes, I hear it faintly in my mind. Why am I here? I don't have an answer, and I don't think I ever will. I had been working the night shift at the convenience store for almost a year, and nothing weird had ever happened, until a few weeks ago. It started with the flickering light in the back storage room. At first, I assumed it was just an old bulb, but every time I replaced it, it would start flickering again within a few hours. Sometimes, it would go out completely, leaving the back of the store in complete darkness. But the real problem wasn't the light. It was what happened when it turned off. One night, I was in the storage room restocking shelves when the bulb flickered twice and died. I sighed, pulling out my phone to use as a flashlight. That's when I heard it, soft, shuffling footsteps just behind me. I froze, my pulse spiking. The storage room was small, and I was alone. Or at least, I thought I was. Slowly, I turned around, shining my phone's light across the shelves. Nothing. But the air felt wrong, thick, heavy, charged with something I couldn't explain. I told myself I was imagining things, finished my task as quickly as possible, and left the room. But from that night on, the feeling didn't go away. Every time I passed the storage room, I felt like someone was watching me from the darkness. Customers started complaining too. They'd glance at the back of the store and frown, like they'd seen something move. One guy even asked me, "Hey, do you know there's someone standing back there?" When I turned to look, the storage room was empty. A few nights later, I was in the middle of a quiet shift when the entire store lights flickered and went out. The emergency lights kicked in, casting an eerie red glow over the aisles. I was alone, completely alone, but I heard it, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving from the storage room toward the counter. My throat tightened. I grabbed the baseball bat we kept under the register and called out, "Who's there?" No answer. The footsteps stopped just a few feet away from me. I could feel something standing there, just out of sight, just beyond the dim emergency lights. I reached for my phone, but before I could turn on the flashlight, the bulb above my head exploded with a deafening pop. Glass rained down on the counter, and I ducked instinctively. When I looked up, the emergency lights flickered again, and for just a second, I saw it, a shadowy figure standing at the entrance to the storage room. It was tall, unnaturally tall, with no features, just a mass of darkness shaped like a person. I don't remember running, but the next thing I knew, I was outside, gasping for air. The store was silent, the lights inside completely dead. When the manager arrived an hour later, everything was back to normal, except for the broken light bulb behind the counter. I tried to explain what happened, but he just shrugged and told me to take the rest of the night off. I never went back for another shift. I quit the next day. I don't know what I saw in that storage room, but I know one thing for sure. When the lights go out in that store, something else wakes up. And I don't want to be there when it does. I moved into my new apartment a few months ago. It wasn't anything special, just a small, one-bedroom unit in an old downtown building. The rent was cheap, and the landlord warned me about the old wiring, saying I might experience some flickering lights. At first, I barely noticed it. The bathroom light would flicker when I turned it on, but it always stopped after a few seconds. I chalked it up to the building's age. But then, bulbs started burning out at an alarming rate. Not just in the bathroom, but all over the apartment, the kitchen, the hallway, even my bedside lamp. I replaced them, but within days, they'd blow out again. The electrician I called checked everything, and said the wiring was fine. "Probably just a bad batch of bulbs," he shrugged. I wanted to believe that, but something felt off. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, my bedroom lamp flickered violently before going dark. I sighed, mentally adding another light bulb to my shopping list. But before I could set my phone down, the overhead light switched on by itself. My stomach twisted. I hadn't touched the switch. I sat up, staring at the light. Then, as if someone was standing right next to it, flicking it up and down, it started turning on and off in rapid succession. My breath caught in my throat. The erratic blinking cast eerie shadows across my walls, making everything in the room feel distorted. I forced myself to move, reaching for the switch to turn it off manually. The moment my fingers touched it, every single light in the apartment shut off at once. Total darkness swallowed me. The only sound was my own breathing, until I heard something else. A soft, slow scratching noise. It was coming from the bathroom. My skin prickled. It wasn't just some random creaking. It was deliberate. Long, drawn-out scrapes, like nails dragging against wood. Then a faint click, the bathroom light turned on. But I hadn't replaced that bulb. It had been dead for weeks. A sickly yellow glow spilled from the crack under the door. I stared, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The scratching grew louder. Then the doorknob rattled. Slowly at first, like someone testing if it was locked. Then violently, as if something was trapped inside and desperate to get out. My legs refused to move. I wanted to convince myself it was some kind of electrical malfunction, but deep down I knew better. This wasn't just a wiring issue. There was something in there. The bulb inside the bathroom flickered wildly, shadows shifting under the door. Then, with a loud pop, it shattered. Glass clinked against the tiles, and once again, I was plunged into darkness. But this time, the silence didn't last. A deep, guttural whisper came from the bathroom, so low I could barely make out the words. It was muttering something. My body finally responded. I stumbled back, heart hammering. The whispering grew more insistent, and then, suddenly, the door creaked open just an inch. That was all I needed. I ran. I bolted out of my apartment without grabbing my shoes, my keys, nothing. My feet slapped against the cold hallway floor as I tore down the stairs. I didn't stop until I was outside, standing in the middle of the empty street, gasping for air. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pull out my phone. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but what would I even say? Hey, my bathroom light is haunted. I stayed outside until the sun came up. Even then, I didn't go back inside alone. I convinced a friend to come with me. The apartment felt different in the daylight, but that eerie sense of wrongness still lingered. My friend laughed, said I probably dreamed the whole thing. But when I opened the bathroom door, I knew I hadn't imagined it. The shattered bulb was still on the floor, tiny shards of glass reflecting the morning light. But that wasn't what made my stomach drop. Scratched into the wood of the bathroom door, deep, jagged marks that hadn't been there before, were 3 words. Let me out. My friend stopped laughing. I didn't say another word. I just packed my things and left that same day. I didn't even ask for my deposit back. I just wanted out. I don't know who or what was in that apartment. I don't want to know. But sometimes when I pass by that building, I glance up at my old window. And every now and then, even in broad daylight, I swear I see the bathroom light flicker.